Testing, testing, 1, 2. Test. So there are those, chapter 11, or verse 11. There are those who curse their fathers and do not bless their mothers. There are those who are clean in their own eyes, but are not washed of their filth. There are those, how lofty are their eyes, how high their eyelids lift. There are those whose teeth are swords, whose fangs are knives to devour the poor from the earth. And so just give me some general thoughts as you consider those, and maybe even look at verse 17, perhaps as a cross-reference. Any thoughts or anything that stands out there that you find is interesting?
I look at it as we're very critical of others, but we're not seeing our own sin.
Okay. Yeah, critical of others. Covetousness that knows no bounds, but they show no mercy. Yeah, I think that's a good insight. I agree. They're clean in their own eyes, but they're not washed of their own filth. Lofty are their eyes, how high their eyelids lift, but they devour the poor from the earth. And so, so here we see 4 classes of evildoers. Let me just ask real quickly, what are those 4 classes of evildoers?
Curse their fathers.
Okay, those who curse father and mother, sure. Second generation or class of people.
So is it just like verse 11, the fathers, like Simone said, and then verse 12, the ones who are never washed of their filth, and then 13, are those all separate ones?
Yeah. There are those, like you said, so verse 12, there are those who are clean in their own eyes, but they're not washed of their filth. So we have people who curse their parents. We have what else? What's 12 referring to?
12 is referring to the ones who think they're self-righteous, right?
Okay, yeah, good.
Or like, it made me think of the log in your eye when there's that.
Yeah, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh no, you're okay. No, that's all. I think it translated as speck, but I was log in the eye and then the speck in the other.
Right. Yes, very good. What's the next evildoer that's mentioned?
Eyes.
How lofty are their eyes? How high their eyelids lift? What would that be? What kind of person might be referencing? Yeah, like a proud person, Simone mentioned. I agree. And then the 4th evildoer, what in verse 14, what type of person is that? Their teeth are swords, fangs are knives.
Bad-mouthing.
Pardon me?
Bad-mouthing people.
Yeah, okay.
I was thinking somebody who takes advantage of others.
Yeah, I think that's good, especially from the last 2 lines. Yeah, devour the poor from the earth and the needy from among the mankind. Yeah, awesome. Well, cool. The 4 classes of evildoers, just real quick, because I was a little delayed in starting the recording, I'm just going to reintroduce this particular study. So we're looking at two groups of Proverbs, the numerical riddles that we find in chapter 30, verses 11 through 28, and then we'll talk about words of the wise as we go along. So, all right, then when we get to verses 15 and 16, there are 4 things that are never satisfied. What are the 4 things that are never satisfied? 15 and 16.
There's people that always suck you the life out of you.
Okay, well, how does the author, Augur, refer to them?
It says give.
Okay,
Always want.
2 daughters.
right, but how does he describe those 2 daughters?
Leeches.
They're leeches. Okay, so the leech has 2 daughters, give and give. What else is never satisfied?
Oh, it's almost the opposite. The person who never says enough.
Okay,
Well, it says, so are you asking what 3 things will not be satisfied?
yeah, what other things are not satisfied in verses 15 and 16?
Well, it talks about Sheol.
Right.
So Sheol would be if I remember correctly, that's not hell. That's the land where the dead go.
Yeah.
That was neither one nor the other.
Yeah, we can say the grave or the place of the dead.
Right. Joseph was saying before God judges them.
Okay,
Yeah, like you said, the place of the dead. Then it says the barren womb.
okay.
The land.
Okay, the land. Never satisfied with water, and what else?
The fire finishes it all.
Okay, fire that never says enough. So let's look at the leech in verse 15. So what is a leech?
I know.
What is it, Joseph?
One stuck to my leg when I went swimming in a river.
Okay, I think it got stuck to your leg when you went swimming in a river.
Did it hurt?
Did it hurt?
It didn't start.
It was more shocking than painful.
Yes.
We were in Idaho, and there was a place where you could jump off a diving board into the river. And they were
Yeah.
like, "Oh, that's really cool." So we jumped off the diving board, and Joseph came back up, and there was this big black leech hanging off the inside of his leg, and he's like, "Ah!"
Yeah,
No,
yeah. I think that would be my reaction.
So that was the end of that day swimming.
Now we chucked a rock on it and left it in the sun.
Awesome. Well,
Anyway, but
so basically it's a blood-sucking, nasty thing.
yeah,
And
Michelle said it's slippery too.
slippery, good point, yeah. So it is never satisfied. So what is the point being made with the illustration of the leech's daughter?
Never satisfied.
Okay,
She will suck you dry.
okay, just drain you, the leech. So does that refer to a certain type of individual, or are we talking about leeches here?
Well, is he naming the daughters here? Like the leech has 2 daughters. One is named Give and the other one's named Give, right?
Yes.
So there's no other point besides the leech having to give and give to these. It's not like we saw the 2 different examples in different proverbs where one's one extreme, one's the other. These are both
Right.
give and give.
Yes, yeah, good point. Yeah, and I kind of take that as, give me. I'm never satisfied. I always want more. It's never enough.
Michelle said that it sounds like if it's the leech's daughters, that maybe they learned it from their parent.
Right. Yes, that's I think that's a good point. So the offspring has the same insatiable appetite as the parent. So, yeah, great point. And so then we also see the grave never fills, the barren womb never stops crying out for children. The dry, parched earth drinks in water and thirsts for more, and fire needs constant fuel to burn. And so,
I had a little connection that I was telling Joseph, just
Okay.
by the way, for those young men around.
mhm.
That is a great example of it is wise to, We usually don't figure this out until too late anyway. But it is wise to not be so interested in the outward look, but to pay attention to the woman's mother and see
Okay.
how she acts. Because
Yeah,
if she is always give, you can make a pretty good guess that that's the way the daughter will be, and that's the way your life will be.
Sure. Yeah, sometimes looking at parents can be helpful. So I was fortunate I had great in-laws. So basically this idea of human greed and covetousness are never filled, and they don't learn, this individual never learns contentment. I think that's kind of the idea. So any other thoughts on the fourth thing, on these things that are never satisfied?
I haven't looked through all the notes yet, but do you allude to like why it's always four things?
Why there are four things?
Well, just like it just seems to be a pattern in this.
Right.
3 things, 4 things, 3,
Right.
you know, and so I just didn't know if you go into it later and you can tell me to wait, but
No, I don't know that there's any magical or any major significance with four things, other than it's probably a literary device.
okay.
So he's going through this. There are four things. There are four things. There are four things, and then there are 3 things, and then 4. And you'll see that sometimes in the prophets. I'm thinking it's Amos. Some of the prophets will use that same type of a device. There are six things, and the 7th is an abomination. That may be in Proverbs as well.
Okay. I just was
Yeah.
curious.
Yeah. No, that's a good question. Good observation.
Okay.
So then in verses 18 and 19, there are 4 things that are incomprehensible to us. And here are 3 things that are too wonderful me. 4 I do not understand. What are the 4 things that are incomprehensible?
The eagle,
Okay, so an eagle in the sky,
serpent,
the serpent on the rock,
ship in the sea,
okay, the way of the ship on the high seas,
and man with a man.
okay, and a man with a woman. So I think the idea is, how can an eagle hang in midair hundreds of feet above the ground, and how can the smooth-bellied serpent without legs climb to the top of a smooth rock and cling there? And how can a heavy ship that is weighed down with cargo float on the top of the water when something much smaller sinks? And what is the mysterious magnetic power which attracts certain men and women to one another instead of someone else? All right, so those would be 4 things that are incomprehensible. What's the point about some things in nature being beyond our comprehension?
That God is, his ways are better than ours.
Okay, yeah, awesome.
Yeah.
It wasn't an explosion.
It was what?
It wasn't an explosion, it was an
Oh, okay, yeah, okay, so there was purpose. What else? You guys want to add? Anybody want to add to those? Those are good answers. So I guess there's always something in nature then that, or something that is beyond our comprehension. Today, maybe we can understand how an eagle flies and hangs in midair, and perhaps we might have answered how a ship can float on the water. But there are always things in nature and that we just don't understand, and they are beyond our comprehension. And so I think perhaps points us then to, as Kelsey was saying, points us to the things of God, his power and his will. There are things beyond our comprehension. There are things that we just don't understand about God. There are things we don't understand about the very world we live in.
And all of these people that have such great knowledge and they talk so deep you can't understand them. But they're the ones that realize this stuff is possible. God had made it
Right, right,
to be.
yeah. So then, when you think about it, when you see these things, when you, I don't know, when you're just kind of hanging out and you're watching an eagle or a hawk floating on the wind, or you're watching some great thing in nature, or some incredible feat that mankind has accomplished, what are your thoughts? What do you think?
God is great.
God is great.
Well, and I think that a lot of the generation nowadays are so neutralized to those things. They don't understand it as a great thing because it's so readily available to them. You know, like when a kid first sees snow outside and it's like, wow, what an amazing thing. And now you can just look up anything on YouTube and see an eagle flying, or you know what I mean? So like when you're not seeing it and you're just like, oh, like living here, man, these mountains are so beautiful. And sometimes I just think, oh, this is just everyday drive, but some people don't get to see this all the time. So
Right. Yeah, good point. Yeah, and I think that, you go certain places and, you go to the Grand Canyon and it's awe. And you watch the hawks and the eagles, and they just catch those updrafts, and I don't know, it's a sense of awe, sense of wonder. I would say we watch the condors, but I've never yet seen a condor in the Grand Canyon. So
I always think of your sermon when you mentioned the rocks along the 87 there, where
Uh-huh.
the rocks are so thick.
yeah,
God always dumped his leftover rocks there.
yeah. So I mean, we look at these things, and God produces them in us to gives them to us, and they produce awe.
And the rocks will cry out if we don't.
Yeah, yeah. So 4 things that are incomprehensible. And then 21 through 23, 4 things that are unbearable. What are those 4 things? Under 3 things, the earth trembles. Under 4, cannot bear up. What's the first one?
There's no food.
the slave when it becomes
Okay, the slave when he becomes king.
king. You kind of, are you jumping around? We kind of missed verse 20. Did we go over verse 20?
Yeah, I did jump over verse 20. I was just looking to the, yeah.
Okay, no, that's why I just want to make sure. Okay.
Yeah.
Chase is laughing at me.
I think she wants to teach the class, John.
No, I don't.
Love the observations. So,
Sorry.
no, you just keep observing and keep mentioning stuff, and I think that's what makes the classes rich.
Just keep me on mute. It's okay.
Well, we're not going to mute you. I will unmute you.
The fool when he is filled with food, an unloved woman when she gets a husband, and the maidservant when she displaces her mistress.
Okay, what's going on with these? What's the author trying to tell us here?
Well, does that 22, we kind of refer back to when the slave becomes king?
Okay.
Spider. And then when the man is full, very content,
Okay.
the maidservant,
What kind of person is this?
selfish? No?
These almost seem like opposites, right? Like things that shouldn't happen, or
You're getting there. I think you're on the right track.
do you know Chase? Oh, Chase underlined it. People not suited for their promotion in life.
Wow, that's amazing, Chase. How did you get that? Man, pretty awesome. Yeah, so people who, I guess they've been raised to higher positions perhaps and have let it go to their head. Ever meet somebody like that?
Yeah.
I like the way you said that. Scott, yeah. So I would ask any of that, you know, have we ever been that individual? And I would hope not.
And sometimes I think, Joseph was mentioning how giving is good, but to a point, and you guys have alluded to that in previous studies. And sometimes that puts the Christian in the position. It's a really hard position because you can't quite figure out exactly where the line is sometimes, but of giving somebody something they don't really deserve. I mean, I guess we all get what we don't deserve if we look at Christ's thing. But anyway, the point being, it's hard to know where that line is of, okay, that's enough giving. They should now take it responsibility to do things on their own.
I was also saying that like giving to the poor is good, but like don't offer other people stuff that's not yours as well.
Okay.
Yeah, Joseph.
Yeah, Joseph.
He is such a
Yeah. Yeah, so I think that, I don't know, what came to my mind is if you watch the Andy Griffith Show, which like maybe is one of the greatest shows ever, and when Barney does something really cool, like he accidentally catches a crook, and all of his bumbling and fumbling, and then he starts strutting around like he's something, it's just hilarious, and he starts thinking he's all tough and bad, and it's like, yeah. Anyways, that's what came to my mind. Barney got lifted to a position that maybe not suited for, and so a mistreated servant might be an oppressive ruler. The fool who receives in abundance will be so self-centered and not share it or use it. The hateful spinster will bring her bitterness and discontent into the marriage. And likewise, the maid who becomes the woman of the house will be intolerable. So those are the general ideas in that.
And it's sad because you would think because they came from that low place, they would understand.
Right.
But it just shows you the corrupt,
Right.
Adamic nature. Being a slave, you would know how it is, but now that he's a king.
Right. Well, that's a great point. And then, in Exodus and Deuteronomy, you keep hearing God say, don't oppress the foreigner because you were slaves at one time too. So you sojourn in a land, don't oppress the sojourner. Remember where you came from. So, all right, and then another group of 4 is in 24 through 28, and these are 4 small but wise things. And let's identify those small. 4 things on the earth are small, but they are exceedingly wise. And what are they? We've got ants. And Scott, my Bible says rock badgers.
mine says conies.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think the word is kind of, Joseph's has a different translation for the things that were in the king's palaces. It says spiders.
Yes, it could be spiders too.
So I think in this case there's some question on exactly what they meant to get at, but it doesn't really probably matter. It just means, so I just think of jackrabbits. That'll work.
Okay. Yes, and then I think lizards probably a little bit better. Those spider would definitely work. But lizard, because you usually get a lizard in your hand. Not too many people are picking up spiders. That's just, a few people do, but most of us might go and grab a lizard. But few of us will go and grab a spider. We might smash a spider.
I just did.
Teeny says she just did. So I didn't notice she didn't pick it up and
No.
tote it outside. So,
That's those losers here in church.
This also cross-referenced the conies to badgers.
okay. So Teeny said that her version says conies, and they are
Badgers.
also called badgers. So, well, what's the point here? What's the author talking about? What is the lesson taught by each of these animals?
They're important too.
They're important too, okay,
There's a purpose for them.
okay.
I don't know what they are, but they were made there for a reason.
Ants aren't strong, but what do?
They're really workers.
All right, and they store their food for the summer.
Yeah.
All right, so,
My Bible says that they're creatures that are weak and small, but they give important lessons.
okay, yeah.
Ants make provision for the future.
Mm-hmm.
The rock badgers taking care to have a place of refuge.
Okay,
The locusts are in cooperation.
right,
Remember the lizards is even the humblest creature can attain the highest circles of society.
all right. Yeah, so 4 small but wise things. I think that's awesome. Ants redeem the time, make provision for the future. And I have some notes. Rock badgers are rodents about the size of a small rabbit. So Scott, your idea of a rabbit was, at least in size, is good. They don't trust in their strength, but they know how to protect themselves from danger. The locusts show discipline and direction, order, that type of thing. And the spider or the lizard is good at getting places through ingenuity, determination, and persistence, and can even find his place in the royal palaces. So these are, sometimes we despise small things, but the idea is some things are small, but they are wise, and they, so.
And I also was, I guess I made it a little bit different. I made a detour on this, on the lizard living in king's palaces, but the idea being that sometimes kings get all about themselves
Mm-hmm.
and talk about, how awesome they are and I'm amazing and I'm like a god, and everybody like forgets, there's lizards in your palace. Everybody goes to the bathroom the same way. It's people are people, and so don't get too proud.
Right. Yeah. That's a good point. So, yeah. Great point.
It's like all God's creation has order.
Yeah.
There's an order there.
Right.
Reminds me of Isaiah 1, where
Right.
it says the ox knows its owner and the donkey its master, but Israel does not know.
Right. Yeah, just because you're small or seemingly insignificant doesn't mean, like Scott said, it doesn't mean that you are less of an individual. In fact, small things can be very wise and very important. So, and then finally, 4 stately things, 29 through 31. I don't think we read those, did we? I don't think we did, so I'll read them. 3 things are stately in their tread, 4 are stately in their stride. The lion, which is the mightiest among the beasts, and does not turn back before any. The strutting rooster, the he-goat, and a king whose army is with him. All right, so 4 stately things. They are regal. Some things are stately and regal, some things are not. And so
Lion is the strongest beast.
okay. Let me look at verse 32 also is helpful for us. If you've been foolish exalting yourself, or if you've been devising evil, put your hand on your mouth. All right. So the idea here, there's a strutting rooster, there's the he-goat, a king whose army is with him. The lion is the mightiest among the beasts and does not turn back amongst many. And I think the idea here is there are certain things that might make us feel proud and arrogant, but be careful about exalting yourself. And if you've been devising evil, put your hand on your mouth. Perhaps the other proverb is pride comes before fall. Might depict this well.
And in verse 33, when it talks about like pressing milk produces curds, pressing the nose produces blood, and then pressing anger produces strife, it's almost like leave well enough alone.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
You know, like it was good as milk. Why are you going to push it and make,
Curds.
you know, curds and then the nose? So,
yeah, I like that. So if you have this status, don't push it too far. I mean, if you're the mighty lion and you're the strutting rooster and you're the king with an army, just be aware you can get in over your head. You can push it too far.
Well, and also, I kind of read it a little differently, and
Okay.
maybe I was thinking, so the things that sort of are stately in nature are things like lions, the rooster, and the male goat, and then the king with his army. And sort of my thought was, you are none of those.
Okay.
So maybe, you know, be careful. And then, because the next thing is talking about if you've been foolish and exalting yourself. So if you are not one of those four things, you probably ought not to exalt yourself.
Okay.
Because things are going to go badly for you.
Yeah, greyhounds instead of rooster.
Oh, Joseph said greyhound. That's interesting.
Huh. All right. Well, that's kind of the some of the riddles. Then these numerical riddles. There are four things, or there are three things, and then there are four. Any final comments on those numerical riddles? All right. Let's look at words to the wise, and we'll move fairly quickly through this one, and our theme verse for this is the incline your ear and hear the words of the wise and apply your heart to my knowledge. And I think this is important. This is a good, I guess, penultimate topic. We've heard the words of the wise. I mean, Proverbs are the words of the wise person, and we've heard the words of the wise on many different subjects. Now the challenge for us is not just to hear the words, but to heed the instruction, to do what we've heard. So what will we do with what we have learned? Our response then will expose either our wisdom or our folly. So let's look first at the listening ear. God made ears and eyes to be used. So Samara, why don't you read 20:12? And Teeny, read 15:31.
Proverbs 20:12. The hearing ear and the seeing eye, the Lord has made them both.
Okay. And then
The ear that heareth the reproof of the life abideth among the wise.
the ear that listens, okay, to life, right, will dwell among the wise. And then 24:32. Then I saw and considered it. I looked and received instruction. And so God gave us eyes and ears to learn and to attune our ears to instruction. And that's contrasted then with tuning, turning a deaf ear. So, Kelsey, will you read 15:10 and 32? 15:10 and verse 32, and then Chase, you get 19:27.
$15.10 is there is severe discipline for him who forsakes the way. Whoever hates reproof will die. And then 15:23, is that what it is?
32.
32. Sorry. Thank you. Whoever ignores instruction despises himself, but he who listens to reproof gains intelligence.
Awesome. Then 19:27, Chase.
All right. Cease to hear instruction, my son, and you will stray from the words of knowledge.
Yeah. So I just wanted to set this one up as to show kind of the contrast. There is that God has given us eyes and ears to learn and to be instructed, and there is a consequence for turning deaf ear and not listening to the words of wisdom. So, and so I think we would also say that listening and seeing is more than just hearing the words. It's actually heeding them. I mean, oftentimes we hear stuff, but it doesn't do us any good. So when we're talking about hearing, I think it's talking about that idea of hearing something and then it actually producing some sort of fruit in our lives. So words of the wise, the value of wisdom. We're going to kind of come back to this. I mean, we started with the value of wisdom. Scott, would you do 23:23, and Joseph, if you're there, 16:16? So that's 23:23 and 16:16.
Wow, that's very repetitive. 23:23 and 16:16.
I thought, yep. It's a sign. I don't know what it's a sign of, but it's a sign.
It's a sign now. Okay. So 23:23 says, buy truth and do not sell it. Get wisdom and instruction and understanding.
Okay. And then 16:16.
How much better to get wisdom than gold, and to get understanding is to be chosen rather than silver.
All right. So what's the point there? What is the value of wisdom?
It's more important to be wise than any amount of money.
Okay, yeah, good point. So some things come at a great price, and some things are worth any price. And I think the idea here is that wisdom is worth any price. So wisdom is there are some things that are important but unpleasant, but wisdom is both precious and sweet. So it's also practical. So the value of wisdom, it's worth it. It's not unpleasant. Medicine may be important, but it may have nasty side effects, or it may taste nasty. Wisdom isn't like that. It's necessary, and it's pleasant and good, and it's useful.
Where do you think they get the saying ignorance is bliss then?
Yeah, well, I guess ignorance, that's an interesting proverb. I guess it can be bliss in many ways. Not knowing can be, but it does certainly fly in the face of the book of Proverbs, doesn't it? Yeah. Maybe I shouldn't, as a person now who's no longer a kid, it was probably good for my mom to be ignorant. That was blissful for her to be ignorant of what I was doing. So I
Yeah, that's a good point. I'll remember that parenting.
just don't tell me. Just don't
I
tell
don't
me.
want to know. I don't want to know.
Yeah. So did you have fun? Yeah, we did. I don't care.
Yeah.
The kids will tell you when they're 30.
Yeah, when they're 30,
That's
they'll tell you. Right. And I told my mom when I was older, I was like, yeah, it's like, you did what?
Yeah. Statute of limitations, right?
Yes. So.
Okay.
The next thing we get is these two ways that life is restricted to two paths. And in chapter 10, verse 17, we read, whoever heeds instruction is on the path of life, but he who rejects reproof leads others astray. wise people challenge us with two ways of life. Everybody thinks they're going their own way. They think that, oh, I'm just being myself. This is, but God said you're traveling on one of two paths. You're traveling on the path of righteousness, or you're being led astray. And so, and each path has radical consequences. (13:13), we got another one, Scott. Another double or couplet. 13:13, whoever despises the word brings destruction on himself, but he who reveres the commandment will be rewarded. The teaching of the wise is a fountain of life, that one may turn away from the snares of death. And 15:24 tells us, the path of life leads upward for the prudent, that he may turn away from Sheol beneath. And so we're on the road to life, or we are on the road to destruction. And there's really Jesus said there's two paths. There's the broad path that leads to destruction, and there's a straight path that leads to life. And I think he probably picks that up from the book of Proverbs. Since he wrote Proverbs, he probably has a pretty good idea of what Proverbs is all about. Or since he inspired Solomon and Augur and some of these others to write Proverbs. And each path has its own destination and its own consequences. So let me ask this. We claim to be independent thinkers. We tend to be architects of our own destiny. We claim to be independent, to travel our own chosen paths. What does the book of Numbers say about that? And is it, so let me just add, what does Proverbs say about that?
You're going to destruction.
Okay, well, that's one path, sure. Are we the architects of our own destiny? Are we independent thinkers?
We try to be, we think we are, but if we know the Lord, you're not.
Okay.
We are semi-independent would be my guess.
All right. How so?
We have free will, but God knows the outcomes.
Okay.
And I think a lot of times, I don't know, I feel like whichever way I go, God will put me where he wants me to be. It just might not be quite so pleasant for me.
Okay. All right. But ultimately, you are on a path of life as opposed to a path of destruction.
I hope so.
Yeah, I was thinking, man, I'm hoping to hear a yes from that.
Amen.
It's a long pause.
Yeah.
I would also say most days. Yes, but the general direction is that way. Yes, not always.
Yeah.
Always.
But even on the bad days, that doesn't divert you as a person who is in union with Christ and on the path of life, even on those days when we wander off, we never really end up in the path of destruction, at least in terms of eternal destruction.
Well, do you feel like if you were to give a visual, are both of those paths like next to each other, or is it like one way this way, one way that way? Do you know what I mean? Like when you say you stray off the path, you'd almost have to do a complete 180 to do the other path, or is it like, oh, I can stray over this way and then be on this path just as easily? Like, do you have a visual for that as just what you've?
Yeah, so I think if we were going to take a visual, I would probably say that the righteous who strays off the path doesn't end up on the path of destruction for a while and then get back. We might be pushing the book of Proverbs a little too far, but I think that's a good question, because I think that's dealt with then in the New Testament. In other words, you'd say, well, now I'm in Christ on the straight and narrow path, and then I do something and now I'm on the path of destruction, and then I get back onto the path of life. And I don't think that that is upheld in Scripture. That then ends up more into kind of a really works-based type of, I mean, I see that
Right.
I see that in the Catholic faith a lot.
Right.
Where people will, when we, especially in Ecuador, we'd say, do you know you're saved? And they would say, sometimes. When I do good, I'm saved. When I'm not doing good, I'm not saved.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, you would have to do a complete 180, and then I would also maintain that once you're on the path of life, that Christ will keep you on the path of life, even if you get off into the weeds a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe like following that North Star. You might not always be going directly north, but
Right.
you're headed the general direction.
Right. And and Christ keeps us. So yeah, awesome. Great insight there. And then finally, the fear of the Lord. Let me ask before we start this, how does the fear of the Lord give us a good foundation for life? Humility? Awesome. Yeah. That's a great thought.
Michelle said giving credit where credit is due.
Okay. Well, we'll just go down this little list, and it might help us. So, fear of the Lord is the best way to learn discipline or learn wisdom. 1533, the fear of the Lord is instruction and wisdom, and humility comes before honor. So, honor and fear and respect for God helps us to learn the wisdom that He teaches. If we don't honor and fear and reverence the Lord, we won't reverence what He says. So, fear of the Lord bears fruit in our lives, and it is also our best security in life. We live in a crazy, 2020 has brought this to life for us, but we live in a world of uncertainty, and we need something that will stabilize us. And the fear of the Lord is a great stabilizing element in our lives. It brings, first of all, it brings security. 14:26, the fear of the Lord, one has strong confidence, and his children will have a refuge. So whatever's going on around the world or in our country, a reverence of God, knowing that He's God, brings us, I think, a lot of security. I would hope it would. I think it would bring joy and happiness. It'll bring contentment and hope. Let me ask you, how does the fear of the Lord bring happiness or contentment or hope?
There's no better happiness than in the Lord.
Okay, no better happiness than in the Lord.
And as you say, this year's been really tough, but just knowing the confidence, knowing Lord, I have the confidence that I'm okay.
Okay, yeah, good. Yeah, for me, it brings, there's a lot of hope. It's kind of like, I don't know that many people in higher offices have any more idea what to do than anybody else. Maybe they do, maybe they don't, but I have a hope that's beyond the wisdom of even the scientific community or the political community or the judicial community or any of that. It's like, yeah, I'm not banking on them.
Well, Michelle said we have a security in that we know what the final outcome will be.
Right.
We do, and we also know that even until we reach the final outcome, we are loved and kept. We are always safe, even though we might be
Might have some problems.
physically tossed about, but we are always safe.
That makes me think one time we used to live on the golf course and Thatcher wanted to run across when there was golfers. And I said, we're going to wait until the golfers leave. And he said, no, God will protect us if we run across. And I said, like, that's great to have that hope, but we're going to be wise about it too,
Right.
because he was just so full of faith that, I'll be safe. God will protect us to run across while they're golfing. And it's just that imagery of like, we still have to do what we need to do.
Right. Yeah.
Here. So.
Awesome. Yeah, I use the illustration. We were at the rodeo years ago, and they have a little button busting contest. That's so awesome. And one little girl, she was like, I don't know, 5. She gets on there, she won. Right? She rode it.
Rose, pink,
Yeah, she was all pink and purple, and and afterwards they're interviewing her, and they're like, were you afraid? And she said, no. I said, how come you weren't afraid? It's like, because my daddy said it was okay. It's like, what a great metaphor, It's like, I'm thinking, I'm going to use that. So my daddy said it's fine, so I'm good. And so, yeah, we have some security. So I guess one of the things we want to do then is just think about some of the things we've learned in our study of Proverbs and how we might be able to put those things to use and make sure that we listen and obey the fear of the Lord. All right, anything else?
There's a whole lot of good nuggets and
Yeah,
problems.
yeah, there's a lot in Proverbs. I mean, we've just kind of, that's a good point, but we just kind of skimmed over them, but
I got some really good points.
yeah. So, well, I hope it's been good. We got one more week, and then, and then by the way, if there's something you would like to study next, let me know. I mean, if there's a topic or a book or a book of the Bible, I would say, or something that you would like to
Understand
just to look into, I'd at least be willing to listen to what that is. I might say I know nothing about that, so of course it's a good way to learn. So, anyways, if there's something you're interested in, just reach out and let me know, and we'll give it a shot. Okay. So we'll see you all next week. Well,
Yeah, 1 more week.
one more week.
All right.
See you guys. Bye. Be
Bye.
blessed.
I like how Joseph always says, bye.